Hi guys, so I feel like we've been talking about horrible killer mutant diseases for too long now, and today I just wanted to do something fun. So I recently got back from the UK from visiting my family, and I enjoy hearing about what people think of the UK when they go there for the first time or, from another culture. So I thought what I'd do today is I, as a British person, am going to react to an American person reacting to Britain. So Britain reacts to America reacting to Britain kind of thing, because I thought that would be kind of cool. So there's this video called Culture Shock in England, 10 Things That Shock Americans when they visit the UK, and it's by Wandering Ravens. I'll leave the full video by them below if you want to go and watch the whole thing. I'm just going to pick out the main points that they talk about and react to them, because I think it could be quite good fun.
Hey guys, I'm Eric.
And I'm Grace. We're the Wandering Ravens.
Oh, I'm also Grace.
And today we are going to tell you 10 things that were culture shock for us when we arrived here in England.
That big bridge behind them, everybody thinks that's London Bridge, but it's not. That's Tower Bridge. London Bridge is actually really, really boring. It's just a really sort of nondescript bridge. But when people think about London Bridge, because of that song, London Bridge is falling down, everybody thinks about the great big impressive Tower Bridge, but that's not it. That was the Globe Theatre in Nelson's column. Sometimes I'm impressed that I still remember this, because if you count 18 as being the age of adulthood, I've now lived in Rwanda for more years than I've lived anywhere else as an adult. So, yeah. But I grew up in England, so obviously these things are quite familiar to me.
The first thing that shocked us when we arrived in England was just how many foreigners there are in London.
We'd always heard that London was multicultural, but just the extent of foreigners that were there was really shocking to us. And not
Yeah, I mean, London is probably one of the most multicultural cities in the world. I do wonder how many of the people that they met from other backgrounds were actually foreigners and how many of them were actually British nationals. Leicester, where I grew up, there's a massive Indian community. We actually have the largest Diwali celebration outside of India. I spoke in one of my previous videos about there's a huge Nigerian community, especially in London. We have huge communities from all over the world living in London and throughout the UK. So Manchester as well, Leeds, So it would be interesting to know how many of those people that they encountered and assumed were tourists or foreigners were actually British nationals or British citizens.
And not in a bad way. It was just surprising because when we were coming to England, we're like, oh, there's probably going to be a lot of English people and we'll be hearing lots of English. But when we were in public, about 90% of the languages we were hearing around us were foreign languages and not English.
Pretty much everywhere was represented.
Yeah, actually, but London is seriously a tourist attraction. There are so many people coming to the UK. And interesting as well, my dad lives over in Gloucestershire, and the Cotswolds are a huge draw, especially for Chinese and Japanese tourists. You often see a lot of tourists going around with their cameras during... Do we still have cameras like that? I don't know. Going around with their phones, taking pictures of the Cotswold villages like Burton on the Water. Yeah, I mean, it is a huge draw for foreigners.
In London. So that was really cool. And to just hear all of the different languages. Because we feel like, Seattle's pretty multicultural as well, but not to the extent of London.
No way.
Number two!
The subways are...
It's not called the subway, it's called the underground. In America it's the subway, in the UK it's the underground, and in Europe it's the metro. So we've all got our own word for it, but it's the same thing, it's the trains that go underneath the ground and connect London.
Are really small. It was actually shocking because our experience with subways is in Korea and Japan, and these subways are very wide. There's lots of standing room. They're also very tall, but the tube, as it's called in London, actually looks...
Actually, that's true. It is also called the tube. It's called the Underground, the London Underground, but it is shortened to the tube, so they're right there.
It's kind of like
a tube.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's like not tall, or at least the ones that we rode on were not tall, like all the way across in the ceiling, but it's kind of like
a box
curved or whatever.
It's true, actually. They are incredibly uncomfortable. You're usually absolutely shoulder to shoulder with people holding onto the rail above you. And they are right. It does kind of curve like that. So if you get pressed up against the side, you're sort of sitting sort of head forward in a curve shape. They are not wonderfully invented, but I just need to check that, actually. I can't remember when they were built. 1863. So we've had an underground since 1863, and yeah, we probably haven't really updated it much since then. And, people were shorter in history. People were shorter way back then. So, I don't know.
Speaking of tubes, that brings us to number 3. I love how English people wait patiently for people who are on the tube to get off before getting on the tube themselves.
Why wouldn't you do that? Because, logically, you can't get onto the tube until people have got off the tube and made room for you to get onto the tube. I'm curious. I don't know where they're going with this, because I just feel like that is the same throughout Europe. Everybody waits for the people to get off before they get on, otherwise you wouldn't physically be able to get on.
Themselves. That is something after living in Korea for a couple years, you'll know that is not the case. As soon as the subway doors open and the train stops, everyone in Korea is just pushing everybody else.
Yeah, no, that makes no sense to me.
Getting on the subway as fast as they can. So it was nice to go to a place where everyone just stands aside and waits for those people who are on the train to get off, which is what should happen.
This is actually so shocking that the very first time we rode the tube, when the doors opened and everyone was waiting for people to get off, Grace turned to me and made that observation. She's like, oh my gosh, they're waiting for people to get off.
I was worried there that they were about to say when the doors opened, they shouldered their way on. Because, if you didn't know that that's not what you do, then I suppose you would do that, but...
What is this? Madness! Number 4. This is just a really quick one, but light switches here are different than they are in the States, and whereas in the States and Korea and other countries, you flip on to turn the light switch on.
Flip up, yeah.
You flip up to turn it on, and flip down to turn it off. Here,
the opposite.
Yeah, from what we've seen, you flip up to turn it off and flip down to turn it on.
I have never noticed that. That's got me thinking now. I'm just going to go and try my light switch here in Kigali. On, off, off. Okay, so here in Kigali, in my house here, you switch up to turn on and down to turn off, which is, I think what they're saying is American, but in the UK you turn up to turn... That's going to really bug me now. I'm going to have to call my mum and ask her which way we turn the light switches on, because I think that the living room at my mum's house, you switch up to turn it on and down to turn it off. Why would you... up to turn off? Help! I don't know the answer to this. I have never thought about it before.
Number 5. The other thing that we found surprising when we arrived in England was that power outlets have to be switched on to use them. So it has a little switch next to it and you have to turn it on in order to...
Yeah? Isn't that the same all over the world? Oh my god, okay. No, it isn't the same all over the world, because here in Kigali, there is no on switch next to my plug. The only reason I thought that's the same all over the world is because I use a lot of, extension plugs, and every one of those extension plugs has got an on-off switch on each plug socket. But the actual ones in the walls here in Kigali don't. But yes, in the UK, you have an on-off switch. Yeah, next to all of them, except in a bathroom where you've got a shaver plug, I think. Yeah.
To use electronic appliances. So many times we've tried to boil hot water for tea or coffee.
Or charge my phone.
And you forget to switch the power outlet on and it doesn't charge or the water doesn't boil and you're like, I kind of like that though, because as I heard someone say the other day it prevents like children from sticking things into the sockets and getting electrocuted. So I like that idea.
Children can't stick things into the sockets anyway. The way that British sockets are designed, I'm fairly sure that I watched a video that explained the difference between American plugs and British plugs and why British plugs are so much safer. And I'm fairly sure that you can't easily stick anything in there. I don't know. I'm now really, really confused about plugs. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm going to find that video and I'm going to link to it below because it explains everything about plugs. I am now just not going to sleep for 3 days because I'm going to be thinking about plugs. How does that work?
So I like that idea.
And then also, like in America, when we go on vacation or something like that, you have to run around the house and unplug everything.
But I would say that a lot of British people, we plug something in, we turn it on, and then we just leave it plugged in on. Like the kettle, we don't switch it on at the plug every time we want to use it because it's already plugged in, it's already switched on, and we just leave it like that. Like you don't switch it off again after the kettle's boiled, you just leave it plugged in with the switch on. Don't we? I'm starting to second guess and question absolutely everything I thought I knew now.
So it
It's
doesn't,
exhausting.
it's not a fire hazard.
Or even like every night you try to like unplug it, you know?
Yeah. Here, you just turn the outlets off. So that's actually kind of cool. It was shocking, but it's kind of cool, and we'll probably try to do that on our own house one day.
Yeah, I like that.
Number 6, something else that has been a little shocking for us, is that tipping here is a bit different than back in the States. Whereas in the States, when you go to a restaurant, any receipt that you get is going to have a tip line where you write the tip. Here at restaurants, they don't have that. And most cafes don't even have a tip jar. And so it's been really confusing for us to figure out what we do for tipping.
Well, mostly we don't. Tipping in the UK, he's probably about to explain this, but just to explain, from what I understand in America, people working as waiters and waitresses make their money from tips. Like that is how they make their money. Whereas in the UK, we've got the minimum wage. And so everybody who's working in a job should be earning a certain amount of money. So they have a wage for doing that job. So in the UK, the way we've always approached tipping is that you tip if the service was particularly good. So if somebody smiles or they made you laugh or the food was exceptionally good, then before you leave, you might stick a little bit extra on the table as you walk out. But from what I understand in the US, and correct me if I'm wrong, but waiters and waitresses there aren't always on a proper wage and therefore they rely upon the tips. So very much for British people, tipping is a sign of gratitude that you've actually genuinely enjoyed your experience there. You don't generally just tip somebody for doing the job that they're paid to do. So from our perspective, there's no incentive for somebody to put extra effort into their job if the tip is guaranteed, because you know if it's guaranteed then you can be polite or you can be rude, it doesn't matter, you're still going to get the money. But the tip is kind of the incentive to put a little bit of a brighter smile on the service, if that makes sense. Because here in Rwanda it's kind of more like the British system, is it's not expected that you're going to tip, but you can if you want to at the end. So I do notice a lot of Americans freak out a lot when they go to restaurants because they're not sure how much to tip or how to give the tip. It's just if you've got a bit of change in your pocket and you really enjoyed your experience, then just leave it on the table as you go. Or if you had an absolutely phenomenal time, you know, leave a note on the table or two. And it's the same in Rwanda, is if you've been to a cafe or a restaurant, you've really enjoyed it, just stick a couple of extra notes in the menu as you give it back. It's not a big deal.
Question though, for the English folk in the audience, when I'm at a restaurant and they give me a receipt that doesn't have a tip line or anything on it, what am I supposed to do? Do I tip? Or is that just like a no tip? Yeah, do you leave it on the table?
You leave it on the table and you tip if you feel like it was good service, and you tip whatever you got left in your pocket. It's
Or is that just like we all agree that there's no tipping going on in this situation? Please let me know down in the comments.
Nobody's going to judge you if you leave and you haven't tipped, unless you go to a really, really fancy restaurant, you know, where you're kind of, you know, a really fancy restaurant, then it might seem a bit rude if you don't. Because if you're eating in a very fancy restaurant, then clearly you've got a bit of extra cash, you know. But no, nobody is thinking about it when you leave. And if you tip, that's really nice. That's great. Thanks. If you don't, you don't. Especially in London, they're never going to see you again anyway. You know, nobody walks around thinking, oh, that person's a bad customer, oh, that person's a great customer. Actually, no, if you left like 50 quid, somebody would think, oh my God, that's an amazing person. But like, no. I mean, I used to work in bars. I used to be a waitress. You know, it was nice if there was something left, but I wasn't expecting it. And I never thought anything different of somebody if they didn't leave anything. It's just not part of the British psyche. Whereas Americans seem to twist themselves up in knots. I do think that the UK is becoming a bit more like America, because now when you pay by card, there's often a gratuity added to your bill. And it says, would you like to pay like 10% extra towards the staff and stuff? And I know in Britain people get really angry about that, because we like the price that you pay at the end to be exactly what you were expecting to pay, whereas Americans have a different way. Especially I've noticed this with tax and VAT, is if you shop on an American site, you think you've got the total and then you check out and they add the VAT on top, so it's always more expensive than you were expecting to pay. And British people, I think Europeans as a whole, hate that. I will not shop at a shop that does that, you know, because in the UK the tax is included in the price total, so you know what you're expecting to pay is what you pay at the end, and there's no sudden hidden surprises. And it's the same with tipping, you know, there's no hidden surprises. You're not usually expected to add more money to what you're already paying, but you can if you want to, and you do that when you've had good service. It's just a way of saying, yeah, you went above and beyond there, thank you very much. So yeah, don't worry about it. Don't turn it into anything bigger than it is.
Number 7. Real quick, I was just going to mention that in grocery stores here in England, they generally have a much larger selection of cheese than they do back home in the States.
We really like cheese. And also, not being funny, but you know, until very, very recently, we were part of the European community, and we're next to France. And France has got probably the best cheese in the entire world. You've also got Edam, you've got sort of all of these other cheeses, and the stinky cheeses from Germany. And we have so many different cheeses, and we love cheese. We like cheese. There's a comedian called Tim Minchin, and he's like a musical comedian, and he did an entire song about his love of cheese. I will leave that below. It is worth going to watch. We like cheese. What's the big deal?
States, which I'm not going to complain about. I love that.
It's amazing.
I think it's just a lot more in the culture here, I guess, than it is back home.
We're also like, traditionally we had a lot of sheep and cows, were very agricultural, so you know we found different ways of making cheese. But I would have to say that I think a lot of our cheeses, I was going to say a lot of our cheeses come from Europe, but then there's Red Leicester, which we invented. There's cheddar cheese, which comes from Cheddar Gorge. And there's, I'm going to say Stilton is probably our invention as well. I know that there are blue cheeses in France and Europe, but I think Stilton might be one that we came up with. Where does Stilton come from? Yeah, it does. It comes from Cambridgeshire. So yeah, we are pretty damn into our cheeses, and we regret nothing. Damn it.
8. This is one you hear a lot, probably, but we don't know which direction to look when we cross the road. And this is for a couple of reasons. One, people here drive on the left side of the road.
That is a problem, because people here in Rwanda drive on the right side of the road. And whenever I go back to the UK, I find myself automatically sitting in the driver's seat when I meant to sit in the passenger seat. And when I come back here, I go to sit in the passenger seat and suddenly I'm sitting in front of the steering wheel. It gets very damn confusing.
I am in fear of being struck by an automobile. That sounded ridiculous.
That was it. Yeah. We're working on our...
That was actually a pretty good English accent, but...
It's so funny! Before crossing the street, there's like paint on the sidewalk that says, look left or look right.
Yeah, we drink a lot in the UK. So, I mean, mostly look left, look right. That is for us when we stumble out of the pub at 11 o'clock at night, absolutely rat-arsed and uncertain, like where we are, and about to walk into a double-decker bus. That is required.
Right. Or look both ways. And so I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, oh,
That was really good.
these English folk have our back.
They know we're stupid.
Number 9.
No, it really is for us.
Number 9. This is more of a question, but it was also a very big culture shock. Why are there 2 separate spigots for hot and cold
What is a spigot?
water? Just, like, somebody please explain. I don't understand this. Like,
These are taps. There is a hot tap and a cold tap. How do we not understand this?
do you want to wash your hands in freezing cold water and not kill any of the germs? I don't know if that's correct, but whatever, that's what I think. Or do you want to scald yourself so that you can't even feel and then you have to be fed by your husband for them?
Ah, I see the issue here. Okay, I see the issue. Yeah, well, a lot of our taps are now mixer taps. So a lot of houses now do have mixer taps where you've got the hot and the cold, and you can control how much it mixes. I mean, that's quite common now in British houses. Yeah, this is the traditional way of doing it. Usually, what we do is we put a plug in the sink, and you'd mix the hot and the cold in the basin before having a wash. But yeah.
2 separate spigots, and you get scalding hot water, or you get freezing
Ice.
cold water.
And so, like, what I was doing, I know this
You
is
just stand up and
ridiculous,
go,
but yeah,
throw
I was
them
just like
together.
throwing them together and like,
Okay, I concede they have got a point. Yes, I have throughout my life scalded myself with the hot tap many times.
somebody explain, because somebody's got an explanation for why
there's a
this is
reason.
better, I'm sure.
Explain it to us.
It's not.
Number 10. It was shocking to us how much people jaywalk here. We had been warned.
Americans call it jaywalking. We call it crossing the street.
My friends said, hey, just so you know, in London, it's okay to jaywalk. But when we came here, it was just surprising to see how frequently everyone jaywalks. Literally.
We do it frequently because to us, it's not an issue. If you don't know what jaywalking is, it's crossing the road when you're not at a given crossing point. So I don't know, I guess in America or places that have anti-jaywalking laws, you have to go to a road crossing and you have to specifically wait for the light to change before you're allowed to cross. And I think you can get fined if you cross the road when you're not at a designated crossing. In the UK, as with Rwanda, if you want to cross the road, you wait until there are no cars and you cross the road. It's
Everyone jaywalks all the
the
time.
time.
Yeah, it's constant jaywalking.
It's not constant jaywalking if we don't have jaywalking laws. It is just crossing the street.
And we're coming from Seattle, which is, I think, in the United States, we are famous for being a city that no one jaywalks in. So it was really shocking to come to England and no one, it's just that
America, land of the free.
Constant jaywalking.
jaywalking. Look, run. Look, run.
Which makes you feel extremely stressed out.
If you don't run, you get hit by the cars. So
Then we don't know which direction the cars are coming from, so if we jaywalk, we might die. So it's kind of like...
stressful for foreigners, extremely entertaining for British people.
And then you know who the foreigners are because they're the ones
They're
that
the
are
dead
waiting
ones.
for the light.
Wow.
That. Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you
interesting.
enjoyed this video.
Well, that was really entertaining. I really enjoy watching things like this, especially not living in England for a really, really long time, because when I go back, there are things that also shock the hell out of me, even though I grew up there. I forget about them. I'm like, oh, okay. And I just get like this kind of perverse pleasure out of, I don't know, listening to people going to somewhere that's really familiar to me and seeing it through their eyes, you know, because people pick up on things like the light switches that I've just never thought about, you know. So I find that really, really interesting. Yeah. Okay, so if you've been to the UK, especially if you're Rwandan and you've been to the UK, Let me know what you thought about it below. Let me know what you struggled with, what you found to be a bit weird, what didn't make sense, or what you thought was somehow better, because I think we do some things like plug sockets quite well. All right, see you in the next one.